welcome to my settings guide for Sea of Thieves. These are the settings that I use and recommend as a player with over 2,000 levels in Hourglass. So, first off is my Keybinds. Obviously movement, I use WASD. Swimmer, all of that is normal. I have walk, the default button for this is control. I don't recommend that because you might misclick it. You don't want to do that. For main interact, so when I grab a cannon, grab a ladder, I have that as F. And secondary interact, and the default for this is R. I like to use E. It's just more natural because of other games that I've played. It doesn't really matter. You can use R, but E feels more natural for most people. Text chat doesn't really matter. Push to talk button is important for me because I, like to talk in game sometimes. I have this as a thumb button. So I have two buttons on my mouse, and I like to use this for one of them. But left alt is the default, and that's also a really good button to use. So obviously primary and secondary use, I have that on default. Fire chat, all of this, normal. Stow is a button a lot of people like to change. I still have it on X, which I think is a great button to have it on. I don't use cycle weapons. Some people like to use this, but I think it's important to be able to know what gun you're about to pull out. And I just use 1 and 2 for my weapons. Some people don't like this. They don't like that you have to take a finger off a movement key. So I use my ring finger to pull out my blunderbuss or pull out my sniper, which yeah, I have to take my ring finger off my A key, but that's fine. Honestly, it does not, you're not going to lose anything from that at all. It takes me 2 seconds, and obviously I'm really used to it. So if you have been using something else, I do honestly recommend you use 1 or 2, or at least use something like using your scroll wheel up and scroll wheel down for 1 and 2, just so you have something to separate them. I don't recommend using a cycle weapons button. Obviously all of this is normal. None of this really matters whatsoever. Okay, so for shortcuts, a lot of people like to use the radial, which I think is really bad. You don't want to use the radial. It's just really, really glitchy. Like you might interact with it and it'll just cause you stutter, which you don't really want. Also, it'll just hinder you. You don't really want to be hindered. Alright, so obviously no button for bait. Bucket, really important. I have this on V. It's a really close button for me. I click that with my pointer finger. Cannonball I have as left alt, which is the default button for push to talk, so some people won't like to use this. You don't have to use a button for cannonballs, but I like to use left alt. If you're not using left alt because it's used by push to talk, I would recommend using G or R or something like that that's close to your pointer finger. As food and blunderbombs are the two main things that you'll be grabbing, so food and throwables. A lot of people like to use those for your thumb buttons. Obviously, I can't do that because I like push to talk on my thumb button, but food is one that you should probably have as a thumb button, as it's one of your main things. I have 5 as a speaking trumpet, 4 as a spyglass. I do use these two, but obviously it's not really going to matter that much. It's not going to change anything competitively. Throwables, I use C, so that's blunderbombs and firebombs. For wood, I use mouse scroll down, which is going to seem a little bit strange. I'm not going to lie, but a lot of people just like to have buckets and wood to be keybinds right next to each other. But personally, I think scroll down is a really great button for wood because I have a free scroll wheel, which is just a really helpful tool that I'm not using to cycle weapons because I think cycle weapons isn't a great thing to use and stuff. There's no other keybinds that really matter too much. If you're a content creator, you might want something like toggle HUD, which I just have, or maybe something to toggle mute, things like that. So input is really important. This is about your sensitivity. So I recommend using 1.1 in game and then maxing out everything else. This will still slow down your ADSs, which personally I'm not a fan of. I wouldn't do this in any other game. But salt sliders don't let you go past this, so either way you just have to slow it down. I recommend using 1.1, all of this on 10, and then your mouse on 800 DPI. If you have a really light mouse, you might want to use something like 750 DPI. But 1.1 800 is what I've always used and I really like. For gameplay, reduce hold to interact is something you always want on. Some people don't like this, which I can understand, but it is just better. It means I only have to click this once. So I tap E, and it does this whole thing. You need this because the game is really buggy, and sometimes you'll click E, and the game just won't register it. Or you'll start holding E, and the game won't register it, rather. But if you have this on, and you just click E, then it'll just always happen. Specifically with loading cannons, this is. If you hold E the entire time, sometimes it just won't work, and then you'll just find yourself like spamming E, not knowing when it's actually working, and it's just really uncomfortable. Another thing is if someone's dead in front of me, okay, I'm reviving my teammate, I can just tap E, and then I can start emoting. I can start sitting down even while reviving them. I could do this with the juice hold to interact off, but it's just a lot more comfortable to have this on. The only downside to having it off is if you die and accidentally click E, you can't cancel it, and you will just offer. The reduce hold to use an item is essentially toggle ADS. You do not want to have this on. Obviously, you want to disable ship sitting and ship trinkets. Auto center camera off. Automatically float in water, definitely off. Although this is kind of irrelevant. You want server authoritative hit markers on. This way, the game will only give you a hit marker if you've dealt damage, as well as when you shoot a harpoon, you'll get a hit marker. Getting a hit marker on the harpoon definitely isn't something that you want. It's actually really annoying, but that's just something that comes with having this on. You can have this off, and it'll, you know, you won't get hit markers on a harpoon, but sometimes you'll snipe someone, and you'll get a hit marker, but it won't actually deal damage to them. That's called hit reg. Alright, so for HUD, you should have pretty much all of this on default for the most part. I have island banners off. Some people like to have this on slimline. Obviously, cinematic is just completely useless. There's no reason to have that. It'll just make massive black bars on your screen all the time. You should disable all these notifications just because it gets really annoying. If you want these on, it's not the biggest issue. It's not really going to like affect you that much. But it just makes a sound cue and has a pop up on your screen randomly, which I personally find really annoying. So for video settings, for DX11 and 12, if you're using a newer PC, you might want to start using DX12, but if you're using an older PC like me, I use DX11. For multi-core rendering, this basically means if your PC has multiple cores, it'll just be more efficient. I honestly couldn't really explain it, but if your PC has at least dual core, then I would recommend using it for better frames. You want to be using your native resolution if you can help it, but if you're having bad performance, then consider dropping to 720p. So it is really good, and you can still run your windowed borderless mode even with 720p on, and you can change your resolution in game. It'll purely just change your, resolution without having to make your game full screen or anything. Brightness, I recommend putting on 55, and color contrast putting on 45. Otherwise, if it's too dark, the game will just, seem really, really dark, and you feel like you need to turn your brightness up, and vice versa when it's really bright. You want to cap your frames at, I would say, 1 above whatever the refresh rate of your monitor is. So I have a 60 Hz monitor, so I go to 720 FPS. If your monitor is anything above 144, I don't recommend uncapping frames. Just ignore the setting. 144 is the cap, you keep this on. Because otherwise, you just get really, really bad performance if you have frames uncapped. Especially when you start reaching over 200 FPS, you just start teleporting when you interact with things. Performance counters, completely optional. Buffering, this is on double, this is so you don't get input delay. Resolution scaling, you want to have this on 100. You don't need this higher, it will kill your game, even if you have an amazing PC. 100 is fine. If you're feeling really, really risky, pump it up to 120. 100 is completely fine though, that's all you need. Alright, so for my graphic settings, I have my FOV on 90, obviously. I have everything on cursed except model detail, which I have on rare. From cursed to rare on model detail is essentially a render distance. Honestly, the game is pretty much fine on common, but I just go rare just in case. This is rendering like players, loot and water, and the fuse on your cannon, which is really important. So, see, I have this kind of loaded here, so I can see this fuse here, but if I go over here, it's not loaded. If I change my model detail to common, I can see it from pretty much anywhere except for up here with common. This is really important, just if you're on cannon, just like, so when you know when your cannon is loaded, which might not seem that important, but trust me, it ends up being pretty important. You can have pretty much everything on cursed. It's actually an advantage to have especially water detail on cursed. If you have this on rare, you'll notice there's a little bit more texturing, a little bit of white on the waves. It's just easy to see people through the waves if you have your graphics on cursed. If you have everything on cursed, you're not really running the risk of having a bad frame drop or something like that. You want blur disabled, screen shake disabled, definitely screen shake disabled. Definitely want that off. So I have my colorblind on green red with max strength, which makes my game look really, really vibrant. I really like how everything looks. My game looks really orangey. The water looks really blue, and I really like this. For a lot of people, this is way too strong, but I at least recommend that you're running, oh, not saturation, you want that on max. You at least want green red on 0.5, just for that little vibrant boost. Alright, so this is what the game looks like without any colorblind settings, and for me this is really bland. For a lot of people this will be normal, but I've been using colorblind settings for quite a while, and I really like red-green, and I like it max, but I think everyone should at the very least have 0.5 on. So I play the game with music volume off. This is mainly for recording, just so it's like, I don't actually mind playing with music, but obviously it's still going to be an advantage to have music off, because you're going to be able to hear everything better. Push to talk, I actually recommend having this on toggle. I have this on hold, but I honestly, I'm just used to it. But I think toggle's better. Like, if I'm boarding someone's boat and I want to talk to them, I don't want to have to hold a key. So I'm now holding this key on my mouse to talk. I don't think that's good. It's probably better to just toggle that, so you can click it and then click it again. Otherwise, you might, like, mess something up if you're holding it. You might mess up some keybinds or something. Enable aim assist audio. You should probably have this off. It honestly does not do anything. It gives you a sound indicator when you're ADSing over someone. You do not need this. Music or hit notification volume, you obviously need this to be up. I think the default is really, really loud. I don't have it too loud. You should have it loud enough that you can... You should have it loud enough that you can hear it, but it doesn't need to be super, super loud. Additional wheel turning sounds, you should have this off. This gives you absolutely no advantage and is stupid and dumb. Range of sea rocks when sailing. You do not want to extend that. That's really bad and annoying. You want to have this off. Alright, for language, text-to-speech override. So when you type something in game or use a pirate quick chat, it'll basically have like a little voice say it, and for everyone. I don't have this on. You can have this on if you want. It's kind of funny sometimes. Disabled is to have it off. Enabled is to have it on, and not overridden is just to have your Microsoft default settings do whatever it is. Obviously, these are just settings for it. I don't use it. Speech to text, I find really, really helpful. So if someone on another boat says something and I can't make it out, speech to text will basically just like, words will pop up. I'll just basically get subtitles for whatever they said, which obviously bugs out every now and then. It's not always perfect, but it's really helpful. Post message duration. You want this on the lowest possible thing. Also, this bugs out a lot and probably won't make a difference. But this is just when you get like a pop-up saying like, see that joined Guardians of Fortune? That's a toast pop-up. I don't want that to be on my screen for 10 minutes, so I have that on the shortest. It's kind of preference. You don't really need to have that. It doesn't really matter. All of this stuff, you can just leave it default. Doesn't really matter unless you want to use it for some reason. I don't know. Hope this guide helped, and thank you for watching.